December 1939. Salisbury Hall, Hertfordshire. England. Geoffrey de Havilland stands in a cramped design office, staring at blueprints that every aviation expert in Britain has already dismissed as suicide. Outside, the war is 3 months old. The Luftwaffe is building the fastest, most heavily armed bomber fleet the world has ever seen, metal monsters bristling with guns and armor plate. And de Havilland wants to build his from wood. Not steel, not aluminum. Wood, plywood, and balsa. Like a child's model airplane scaled up to full size. His design team, a handful of engineers who followed him from the main de Havilland factory, watches as he traces his finger along the fuselage cross-section. No defensive guns, no armor, no turrets. Just 2 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. The same ones powering Spitfires, mounted on wings made of laminated birch and spruce. The whole thing held together with casein glue derived from milk. "They'll laugh us out of the Air Ministry," one engineer mutters. They already have. De Havilland had pitched the concept to the ministry in October. A twin-engine bomber that would be so fast, it wouldn't need guns. It would outrun enemy fighters instead of outgunning them. The officials had listened politely, then filed his proposal under rejected. Too radical, too fragile, too bloody wooden. But de Havilland knows something they don't. Wood, properly engineered, has a strength-to-weight ratio that rivals aluminum. It's also radar transparent, easier to repair in the field, and doesn't require the strategic metals that Britain is desperately short on. Every ounce of aluminum is going into Hurricanes and Spitfires. There's none left for bombers. He gets his chance when the ministry, drowning in competing designs and production delays, reluctantly greenlights a single prototype. 1 aircraft, prove it works, or shut up. January 1940, Salisbury Hall. The Mosquito takes shape in secret, hidden in the countryside like a conspiracy. The fuselage is built in 2 halves, each molded over concrete forms. 3 layers of birch plywood, grain running in opposite directions, bonded with casein glue and cured in heated molds. The result is a shell that's lighter than metal and stronger than anyone expects. Wings are built the same way balsa cores, sandwiched between birch plywood skins. The workers, furniture makers, boat builders, piano craftsmen have been pulled from civilian industries. They treat the wood like living material, checking for grain flaws, moisture content, glue curing times. Aircraft factories are churning out riveted metal bombers at a rate of dozens per month. Here, in a converted manor house, a handful of craftsmen are gluing together something that looks more like a racing yacht than a weapon of war. November 25th, 1940, Hatfield Aerodrome. Test pilot, Geoffrey de Havilland, Jr. The designer's son climbs into the cockpit of prototype W4050. The Mosquito sits on the tarmac like a sleek wooden predator, twin-tailed, twin-engined, with a glazed nose cone that gives it an almost insect-like appearance. No gun ports, no turret, just speed. He pushes the throttles forward. The Merlins roar. The aircraft accelerates down the runway faster than any bomber has a right to, and lifts off after just 800 feet. He climbs to 10,000 feet and levels out. Then he opens the throttles to full power. The Mosquito surges forward. The airspeed indicator climbs past 300 miles per hour, then 350, then 380 miles per hour. He's flying a bomber faster than most fighters, faster than the Luftwaffe's Bf-109E, faster than anything the enemy has except their newest, not yet operational interceptors. He lands with a grin splitting his face. "It flies," he tells his father, "like a bloody fighter." February 1941, Air Ministry, London. The officials are reviewing performance data from the prototype trials. Maximum speed 392 miles per hour. Service ceiling 34,000 feet. Range 1,500 miles. Bomb load 2,000 pounds. And it can do all of this with a crew of just 2 pilot and navigator sitting side by side in a cockpit so cramped they can barely move. One officer taps the paper, and it's made of wood. Plywood, de Havilland corrects. Birch, balsa, and spruce, bonded and laminated. What happens when it gets hit? It doesn't get hit. That's the point. The officer leans back. The RAF is losing bombers at an obscene rate. Wellingtons, Hamptons, Whitleys, all lumbering through German airspace at 180 miles per hour, getting shredded by flak and fighters. Every mission is a bloodbath. They need something that can survive. How many can you build? The officer asks. As many as you need. De Havilland says. The materials aren't rationed. We can use furniture factories, boat yards, joinery shops, anywhere with skilled woodworkers. We don't need aluminum. We don't need steel. Just wood and glue. And the order comes through in March. Build them. Build as many as you can. The Mosquito goes into production. But the Luftwaffe doesn't know it exists yet. They're still hunting slow, lumbering bombers with heavy fighter escorts. They have no idea what's coming. Section 2. The Wooden Wonder goes to war. Previous section text continues seamlessly from this section. September 17th, 1941. RAF Benson Oxfordshire Squadron Leader Rupert Clerk watches the first operational Mosquito roll onto the apron. It's painted in photo reconnaissance blue, a pale, ethereal color designed to blend with high-altitude skies. No bombs on this one. No guns either. Just cameras mounted in the bomb bay and fuel tanks stuffed into every available space. The mission brief is simple: fly to Paris in broad daylight, photograph German installations, and come home, alone, unarmed, at 25,000 feet, where the air is thin and the Bf-109S struggle to climb. Clerk and his navigator, Flying Officer Robert Fawcett, climb aboard. The cockpit smells of fresh wood and aviation fuel. The instruments are standard RAF issue, but everything else feels different, lighter, more responsive, like they're sitting inside a very fast coffin. They take off at 0800 hours, over the channel. Clerk pushes the throttles forward and watches the airspeed climb. 300 miles per hour, 320, 340. The Mosquito is barely straining. Below, the white cliffs of Dover disappear behind them. Ahead, occupied France. German radar picks them up over Dieppe. A flight of Bf-109Fs scrambles from an airfield near Abbeville, the Luftwaffe's elite Abbeville boys, the best fighter pilots on the Channel Coast. They climb hard, afterburners screaming, chasing the single radar contact, racing toward Paris. At 23,000 feet, they spotted a tiny dot against the blue. Impossibly high, impossibly fast. The 109S push their throttles to combat emergency power. Their engines howl. They climb through 24,000 feet. 25,000 feet. The air thinning. Their rate of climb dropping to a crawl. The Mosquito is at 27,000 feet now, pulling away like they're standing still. The lead German pilot fires a hopeful burst. The tracers arc through empty air. 2,000 feet below their target. Clerk doesn't even know they're there. He's busy photographing the Renault factory at Billancourt. Camera shutters clicking in the bomb bay, capturing crisp, clear images of German truck production. Mission complete. He banks west and opens the throttles wider. The 109s give up at the French coast. Their fuel gauges reading empty. Their pilots furious and humiliated. Clerk lands at Benson 3 hours and 41 minutes after takeoff. Not a scratch, not a bullet hole. The intelligence officers develop the film and stare at images so detailed they can count individual vehicles on the factory floor. Do it again, they tell him. Tomorrow. November 1941, occupied France. Mosquito reconnaissance flights become routine. Every day, sometimes twice a day. The wooden aircraft slip over Europe at altitudes and speeds the Luftwaffe can't touch. They photograph factories, harbors, airfields, troop concentrations. The Germans throw everything at them, improved 109 AS, the new FW-190S, even experimental high-altitude interceptors. Nothing works. The Mosquito crews start taking liberties. They fly lower, slower, deliberately baiting German fighters just to watch them fail. One pilot buzzes a Luftwaffe airfield at 50 feet, his slipstream blowing tarps off parked aircraft, then climbs to 30,000 feet before the scrambled fighters even get their wheels up. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, receives increasingly frantic reports. British aircraft are roaming over Germany with impunity. His fighters can't catch them. His flak can't reach them. What kind of aircraft is it? He demands. We don't know. Herr Reichsmarschall. It's very fast. Twin-engined. No markings we recognize. Then shoot it down. They can't. May 31st, 1942, Cologne. Germany. The bomber variant arrives. The Mosquito B. IV same airframe. Same engines. But with a 2,000-pound bomb bay and provision for 4 500-pound bombs. Still no defensive guns. Still just 2 crew. 4 Mosquitoes from 105 Squadron take off from Marham just after midnight. Their target, the Cologne suburbs, specifically a Gestapo headquarters building. The main RAF bomber force 1,000 Lancasters, Halifaxes, and Sterlings is hitting the city center in the first 1,000 bomber raid of the war. The Mosquitoes are tasked with a precision strike while the city burns. Squadron leader George Perry leads the formation across the North Sea at 1,500 feet, below German radar coverage, then climbs over Holland. By the time German night fighters react, the Mosquitoes are already at 28,000 feet, racing toward Cologne at 320 miles per hour. The city is an inferno. 1,000 bombers have dumped 1,500 tons of high explosive and incendiaries. Fires rage across entire neighborhoods. Smoke towers to 15,000 feet. Flak bursts fill the sky, thousands of shells. A curtain of shrapnel and explosive that no aircraft should survive. The Lancasters lumber through at 180 miles per hour. Massive 4-engine bombers that can take punishment but can't dodge. Flak tears into them. Fighters rip through the formations. 22 bombers go down in flames. The Mosquitoes slip through like ghosts. They're too high for most flak, too fast for fighters. Perry puts his aircraft into a shallow dive, accelerating to 380 miles per hour, and drops his bombs from 18,000 feet. The 500-pounders plunge into the smoke and detonate precisely on target. The Gestapo building collapses into rubble. The 4 Mosquitoes are out of German airspace before the fighters even locate them. They land at Marham as the sun rises. 0 casualties. 0 damage. Every bomb on target. The bomber crews, the ones who survived, stare at the wooden aircraft with something like religious awe. September 1942. RAF headquarters. The tactical reports are piling up. The Mosquito isn't just effective, it's revolutionizing air warfare. A Lancaster needs 7 crew and burns through fuel carrying tons of defensive armament. A Mosquito needs 2 crew, carries a quarter of the bomb load, but delivers it with 10 times the accuracy and losses measured in single digits instead of dozens. The mathematics are brutal and undeniable per ton of bombs delivered. The Mosquito loses 1/10 the crew and costs half as much to operate. Production ramps up. Furniture factories across Britain, places that made dining tables and bedroom sets last year, are now assembling wings and fuselages. Piano makers are crafting control surfaces. Boat builders are laminating fuselage shells. By the end of 1942, Mosquitoes are rolling out at a rate of 200 per month. The Luftwaffe designates it the wooden nightmare. German pilots call it Mosquito and warn each other, don't chase it. You'll just waste fuel and die frustrated. January 30th, 1943. Berlin. Germany, 11:00 a.m. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring stands at a podium in the Berlin Sportpalast, addressing a crowd of Nazi Party officials on the 10th anniversary of Hitler's rise to power. Outside, thousands of Berliners line the streets despite the cold, waving swastika flags, cheering for the Führer. The speech is being broadcast live across Greater Germany. Göring leans into the microphone, his chest heavy with medals. The British claim they can bomb the Reich. He bellows. But where are they? I have promised the Führer, promised the German people that not a single enemy bomb will fall on Berlin. And I have kept that promise. The crowd erupts in applause. At that exact moment, 600 miles to the west, 3 Mosquitoes from 105 Squadron cross the Dutch coast at 25,000 feet. They're flying in loose formation aircraft spread 300 yards apart to avoid mid-air collision in cloud. Each carries 4 500-pound bombs. The target, the heart of Berlin. The mission arrived precisely at 11:00 a.m. during Göring's speech and shut him up. Squadron leader Robert Reynolds leads. His navigator, Flight Lieutenant Edward Sismore, crouches over the map table, calling out waypoints. They're flying a zigzag course to confuse German radar, changing altitude every few minutes, using cloud cover when available. German controllers track them intermittently. 3 aircraft heading east, fast movers, probably reconnaissance. Fighters scramble from Jever and Wunstorf, but the Mosquitoes are already past them, slipping through gaps in the coverage like water through fingers. Over Brandenburg, Reynolds pushes the nose down slightly, accelerating to 340 miles per hour. Berlin appears through broken cloud, a sprawl of gray buildings and snow-covered streets. Flak batteries open fire, but they're calibrated for slower bombers at lower altitudes. The shells burst 2,000 feet below the Mosquitoes. Reynolds checks his watch, 11:0002. Bombs away. The 4 500-pounders drop free. The Mosquito lurches upward, suddenly 2,000 pounds lighter. Reynolds banks hard left and opens the throttles to full emergency power. Behind him, the other 2 aircraft dump their loads and scatter. The bombs plunge through 25,000 feet of cold air and detonate in the government quarter. One hits the Air Ministry building, Göring's headquarters. Glass explodes across Wilhelmstrasse. The shockwave rattles windows 2 blocks away. Inside the Sportpalast, Göring freezes mid-sentence. Someone rushes to the podium and whispers in his ear. His face turns purple. The broadcast cuts to music. The 3 Mosquitoes are already over the Baltic, racing for home at 360 miles per hour. German fighters scramble from a dozen airfields, but they're chasing contrails. By the time they reach intercept altitude, the Mosquitoes are crossing into Swedish airspace, untouchable. Reynolds lands at Marham 3 hours after takeoff. The ground crew counts 0 bullet holes. The RAF releases the news that evening: Berlin bombed in daylight during Göring's speech. The propaganda value is immeasurable. German civilians, who've been told Britain is defeated, stare at bomb craters in their capital and wonder what else they've been lied to about. March 1943, RAF Bomber Command Headquarters. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris studies the mission reports. The Mosquito raids on Berlin have continued, sometimes daily, sometimes twice per day. Small formations, never more than 6 aircraft, hitting precision targets with minimal losses. The Luftwaffe can't stop them. The flak can't reach them. But Harris wants more. He wants the Mosquito to go deeper, stay longer, and hurt worse. Enter the 4,000-pound Cookie, a thin-cased high-explosive bomb the size of a trash can, designed to level buildings through sheer blast effect. The standard Mosquito bomb bay can't fit it. De Havilland's engineers go back to the drawing board. They redesign the bomb bay, bulging it outward to accommodate the massive weapon. The new variant, the B-16s, can carry either one 4,000-pound Cookie or a mix of smaller bombs totaling the same weight. It's still made of wood. It's still unarmed. But now it hits like a sledgehammer. June 20th, 1943. Wuppertal, Germany, 1:30 a.m. 8 Mosquitoes from 139 Squadron approach the industrial city in darkness. They're flying low just 500 feet above the deck, racing across Germany at 300 miles per hour. The plan is insane: arrive ahead of the main bomber force, drop 4,000-pound Cookies on factories to start fires, then get out before the flak wakes up. Flight Lieutenant Bill Blessing flies the lead aircraft. His navigator, Sergeant Ron Goodman, calls out landmarks in the darkness: rivers, roads, rail lines. No radar navigation yet, just eyeballs and maps and moonlight. Wuppertal appears as a cluster of lights, blackout regulations ignored because the city hasn't been bombed before. Blessing pulls up to 500 feet and toggles the bomb release. The Cookie drops away, wobbling slightly, and plunges into the factory district. The detonation is apocalyptic. 4,000 pounds of high explosive vaporizes a city block. The blast wave shatters windows half a mile away. Fires erupt instantly. The Cookie's purpose isn't to destroy buildings, but to rip them open so incendiaries can do their work. The other 7 Mosquitoes drop their loads in sequence, each bomb tearing a new crater in the industrial zone. Then they're gone, diving back to 500 feet, racing west while the city's defenses finally wake up. Behind them, 630 heavy bombers, Lancasters and Halifaxes, arrive over the burning city and dump 700 tons of bombs into the flames. The fires merge into a conflagration that consumes 80% of the city's built-up area. The Mosquitoes land at their bases with 0 losses. The heavy bombers lose 12 aircraft, acceptable by Bomber Command standards, catastrophic by Mosquito standards. September 1943. Over Germany, the Mosquito squadrons develop a new tactic: the nuisance raid. Small formations, sometimes just 2 aircraft, penetrate deep into Germany at night, striking industrial targets, railway junctions, or simply dropping bombs on cities to force blackouts and disrupt war production. The Germans can't ignore them. Every radar contact must be investigated. Every air raid siren must sound. Entire cities shut down their factories and send workers to shelters for 2 aircraft carrying 4 bombs. The psychological effect is devastating. German civilians, already exhausted from years of war, lose sleep every night. Factory production drops, morale crumbles, and the Mosquitoes keep coming, sometimes 5 raids per night on 5 different cities, stretching German defenses to breaking. The Luftwaffe throws its newest interceptors into the fight. The FW-190A6, the BF-109G6 with boosted engines, even experimental jets like the Me-262. Nothing works. The Mosquito is too fast, too high, or too low. It appears and disappears before fighters can react. One German pilot, Oberleutnant Fritz Hahn, manages to close within gun range of a Mosquito over Hamburg. He's flying a specially modified Bf-109G with nitrous boost, pushing his aircraft to its absolute limit at 26,000 feet. He lines up the shot, finger on the trigger. The Mosquito pilot sees him, firewalls the throttles, and simply accelerates away. Hahn watches, disbelieving, as the wooden bomber pulls ahead like he's flying in reverse. His engine overheats from the nitrous injection. He has to break off or risk flame out. He lands, climbs out of his cockpit, and tells his crew chief that thing isn't an airplane, it's a goddamn magic trick. December 1943. Berlin, the Mosquito raids on Berlin intensify. The RAF calls it the Light Night Striking Force, a squadron-sized formation that hits the capital almost every night, dropping 4,000-pound cookies on government buildings, railway stations, and residential districts. The Germans build more flak towers. They improve radar coverage. They deploy their best night fighters. None of it matters. The Mosquitoes come at different altitudes, different speeds, different routes every night. Sometimes they're at 30,000 feet. Sometimes they're at rooftop level. Sometimes they orbit the city for hours, dropping single bombs at random intervals to keep the sirens wailing and the population awake. Göring, the man who promised no bombs would fall on Berlin, stops making public appearances. February 3rd, 1945, Berlin. Noon, the war is nearly over, but Berlin doesn't know it yet. Soviet armies are 40 miles from the city's eastern suburbs. The Western Allies are across the Rhine. The Reich is collapsing, but the machinery of Nazi government still grinds forward in its underground bunkers. 20 Mosquitoes from 627 and 692 squadrons cross into German airspace at 28,000 feet. This isn't a nuisance raid. This is a precision strike timed to coincide with a high-level meeting of Nazi officials at the Reich Chancellery. British intelligence has intercepted the schedule. The Mosquitoes are there to kill the leadership. They're carrying a new weapon, the 4,000-pound blockbuster Cookie, modified with a delayed action fuse. The bombs will penetrate deep before detonating, collapsing entire buildings from within. Squadron leader Robert Bob Bram leads the formation. He's the RAF's top-scoring night fighter pilot, 29 kills, but today he's flying a bomber. His navigator, Don Walsh, crouches over the H-2S ground mapping radar, calling out the approach to the target. Berlin's defenses are a shadow of what they once were. Most of the experienced flak crews have been sent to the Eastern Front. The fighter squadrons are grounded for lack of fuel, but the Germans still have hundreds of guns, and they're firing everything they have. The sky over Berlin erupts in black bursts. Shells detonate in precise altitude bands 15,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 25,000 feet, a curtain of shrapnel that no aircraft should survive. Mosquitoes fly through it at 30,000 feet, just above the killing zone. Braham watches the flak bursts below, calculating. The Germans have adjusted their fuses. Next time, they'll reach his altitude. He calls to the formation, increase speed, combat power. The Merlins scream. The Mosquitoes accelerate to 380 miles per hour. Walsh calls the turn. Bomb run, 30 seconds. The Reich Chancellery sits in the center of Berlin, a massive neoclassical building that once symbolized Nazi power. Now it's a fortress, surrounded by flak towers and underground bunkers. 10 seconds. Flak bursts bloom directly ahead. The Germans have found their altitude. A shell detonates 50 yards in front of Braham's aircraft. Shrapnel punches through the wooden nose, spider webbing the canopy. The aircraft shudders but keeps flying. Bombs away. 24,000-pound cookies drop free. They fall through 5 miles of air, accelerating to terminal velocity, and plunge into the government quarter. The delayed fuses give them 3 seconds to penetrate before detonation. The first bomb punches through the Chancellery's roof, smashes through 2 floors, and detonates in the conference room. The building heaves upward, walls cracking, then collapses inward on itself. The other bombs strike ministry buildings, SS headquarters, and bunker complexes. The entire government district erupts in smoke and fire. The mosquitoes bank away and dive, trading altitude for speed. Braham's aircraft is leaking hydraulic fluid and vibrating badly. But the engines are still running. They race west at 400 miles per hour, the wooden airframe screaming under the stress. Behind them, Berlin burns. March 18th, 1945. Occupied Denmark. The war has become personal. The Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen's shell house contains files on the Danish resistance. Names, addresses, safe houses. If those files reach Berlin, hundreds of resistance fighters will be arrested and executed. The RAF receives a desperate request: destroy shell house. But there's a problem. The building is in the center of Copenhagen, surrounded by civilian homes. A standard bombing raid would kill thousands of Danes. The mosquitoes are the only option. 18 aircraft from 487, 464, and 21 squadrons take off from England. The plan is audacity itself. Approach Copenhagen at rooftop level, climb at the last second, and drop bombs with pinpoint accuracy on shell house. Acceptable margin of error 0. Group Captain Bob Bateson leads. He's flown 50 Mosquito missions and never lost an aircraft. Today, he's flying at 50 feet above the North Sea. Navigation lights off, hugging the waves to avoid radar. The Danish coast appears snow-covered fields and frozen lakes. Bateson pulls up to 100 feet and follows a railway line directly into Copenhagen. Houses flash past his wingtips. Civilians look up, startled, as the wooden bombers roar overhead. Shell House looms ahead, a 6-story building with a distinctive curved facade. Bateson pulls up sharply, climbing to 200 feet, and releases his bombs. They're fused for an 11-second delay, designed to penetrate before detonating. The bombs strike Shell House's southern wing. Explosions ripple through the building. The facade collapses. Gestapo officers stumble into the street, bleeding, disoriented. The second wave drops their bombs on the northern wing. The entire structure shudders and collapses inward, burying the archives under tons of rubble. But the third wave has a problem. Bateson's aircraft, damaged by flak fragments, is trailing smoke. The following pilots mistake the smoke for the target marker and drop their bombs on a nearby building. It's a school, Jeanne d'Arc School. 86 children and 18 adults die instantly. Mosquitoes escape at rooftop level, but the victory is hollow. Shell House is destroyed. The Gestapo files are gone. The resistance is safe, but the cost is unbearable. The pilots land in England and learn what they've done. Some of them never fly again. April 25th, 1945. Eagle's Nest, Berchtesgaden. The war is in its final days. Hitler is trapped in his Berlin bunker. The Reich is disintegrating. But there's one last target the RAF wants destroyed: the Eagle's Nest. Hitler's mountain retreat, a symbolic heart of Nazi power. 12 Mosquitoes from 617 Squadron, the legendary Dam Busters, approach the Bavarian Alps at 20,000 feet. They're carrying tall boy bombs, 12,000-pound earthquake bombs, designed to penetrate deep and destroy through seismic shock. The Eagle's Nest sits atop Kalestein Mountain, accessible only by a narrow road and a tunnel through solid rock. It's the most heavily defended location in Germany, flak towers on every peak, machine gun nests carved into the mountainside. Wing Commander Johnny Fauquier leads the attack. He's Canadian, a veteran of 100 combat missions, and he hates Nazis with a purity that borders on religious. The Mosquitoes climb to 25,000 feet and begin their bomb run. Flak fills the sky, not the radar-directed guns of Berlin, but manually aimed weapons firing by sight. Shells burst all around them, shrapnel pinging off wooden fuselages. Fauquier steadies his aircraft and releases the tall boy. The 12,000-pound bomb drops away, fins stabilizing, and plunges toward the mountain. The other Mosquitoes release in sequence. The tall boys hit the mountain like meteors. They don't just explode, they create localized earthquakes. The Eagle's Nest, built into solid granite, shakes apart. The access road collapses. The tunnel caves in. The building itself, Hitler's private sanctuary, slides down the mountainside in an avalanche of stone and twisted metal. The Mosquitoes turn for home. Behind them, the symbol of Nazi invincibility lies in ruins. May 2nd, 1945, RAF Banff. Scotland, the war in Europe ends 6 days later. The Mosquito squadrons stand down. Their aircraft lined up on grass airfields across Britain. In total, 781 Mosquitoes have been built. They've flown over 28,000 operational sorties. Loss rate less than 2%, the lowest of any combat aircraft in the war. The wooden aircraft that everyone mocked has outlasted the Reich. Final accounting, the Mosquito destroyed more targets per aircraft loss than any bomber in history. It photographed every major German installation. It struck Berlin 170 times. It sank U-boats, destroyed V-1 launch sites, assassinated Gestapo officers, and terrified an entire nation. The Germans, who prided themselves on engineering superiority, were beaten by plywood and glue. After the war, captured Luftwaffe documents reveal something remarkable. German engineers tried to copy the Mosquito. They analyzed wreckage, studied the lamination techniques, attempted to reverse engineer the construction methods. They failed. Their wooden prototypes were too heavy, too slow, too fragile. The secret wasn't just the materials, it was the craftsmanship, the obsessive attention to grain direction and glue curing and weight distribution. Skills that took British furniture makers generations to perfect. The Germans had all the engineering expertise in the world. What they didn't have were piano makers who understood wood like a living language. By 1946, most Mosquitoes are scrapped. Wood rots. Glue deteriorates. The airframes that survived the war can't survive peacetime storage. The RAF moves to all-metal jets, and the Mosquito disappears into history. But the pilots remember. The navigators remember. The crews who flew the wooden wander into the heart of Nazi Germany and came home alive. They remember. They remember the aircraft that everyone said would fail, that was built from trees and assembled by craftsmen, that outflew every fighter the Luftwaffe could throw at it. They remember the Mosquito, the wooden nightmare that won the war.